The Chuds are winning. We are not just winning, we are in control. Chuds in control. The Chaos Emeralds belong to us now. It's true. Just take a look at the average leftoid online. They are not having a good time. The performatively political normie libtard, molding beneath a shattered saccharine smile. The astroturfed USA'd NAFO shill, seething as notions of peace in Ukraine echo throughout the timeline. The DEI-hired black trans lesbian video game developer, shaking with impotent rage as they're laid off en masse. The corporate suits opportunistically turning away from wokeism, no doubt after receiving the elite nod. Yes, it's okay to move on from these people. Yes, they're mentally ill. Yes, their usefulness has run its course. Mark Zuckerberg breakdancing out of the boardroom door, a cherry red MAGA hat atop his Semitic dome. Behold, the arbiter of the new pre-singularity America, as the Thiel-adjacent Silicon Valley technocrats close ranks and usher line after line of blue-haired Marxist troons into giant trains to be transported to FEMA camps across the country. Perhaps we are actually winning, regardless of whether or not this new Trump admin is actually legit. Pandora's box has opened. The cat is out of the bag. We are in uncharted culture war territory here. Despite the US kosher elite swinging right-wing, scrambling to set up an alternative to the far-right online, who are memeing perhaps as hard as they've ever memed before, they're surging. Normalizing speech around topics so edgy a couple of years ago you would have been sent to a Siberian gulag for even thinking about publicly discussing things like World War II revisionist history or the true intellectual and religious origins of wokeism, the founding of Israel, and its lobby's vast influence over US foreign policy. Truly a time of great revelation, of awakening, where people want to know the truth about this world, the modern era, and its highly occulted history. A colossus made of lies can be extremely intimidating, but it can be burned down with the smallest ember of truth. It might take a while for the fire to really get going, but once it's going, that's it. The entire artifice, immolating in terrible, illustrious majesty, as it all burns the fuck down. That's kind of where we're at right now, in my opinion, as a civilization. It's hard not to recognize the consequences of the postmodern, post-truth society finally having to contend with its own accrued karmic debt. And really, I'm seeing this phenomenon all over the place right now. Let's zoom in and focus on the culture war theater of gaming, as I tend to do on this channel. You can see, as if staring into a shit-encrusted snow globe, you observe a microcosm of the wider cultural conflict and the absolute state of our opposition, as both woke devs and journalists alike lash out in futility at the chud-shaped phantasm lurking in the holes of their unconscious, troon kitsch-themed mental palaces, slowly driving them mad. And I know what you're going to say. Ptolemy, you're getting way ahead of yourself here with the celebration. Look at all the gay, subversive slop still being dumped upon us by Hollywood. Look at all this unplayable, politicized garbage coded by gender-confused, anti-white narcissists still being shilled all about my timeline. Well, it's my understanding that a lot of these truly terrible woke IPs were greenlit years ago, during the summer of Floyd. You can imagine an absolute deluge of shit being greenlit for production as wokeism reached its zenith. A truly hellish time for anyone normal in society, but there are consequences for every action taken. I believe karma is real. I'm not a Buddhist, but it's abundantly clear to anybody paying attention that the zeitgeist has truly changed. The spirit of our times is now an anti-woke spirit, whether you like it or not. And the smartest of our corporate elites have figured this out already. That's the deal with Zuckerberg, and you'll see Bezos making similar moves because they want to position themselves on the right side of business. And wokeism, in reality, is not good for business unless it's being funded to such a degree that profit really isn't important. It's that losses are compensated, risks fundamentally reduced in this Gramscian woke parody of American capitalism. Western markets so controlled it would make a red Chinese communist blush. Oh, that sounds a little conspiratorial to you? Well, one of the first big symbolic wins of this new Trump admin is, of course, the exposure and defunding of the US aid program, a multi-billion-dollar slush fund set up by the US government itself and used to finance woke, i.e. far-left neo-Marxist political action, not just domestically, but on a global industrial scale. We are talking about film, we are talking about industry, education, media. Everything has been touched by this funny gay money. I never want to hear a leftoid mention democracy ever again, I mean, is this democracy? What, Soviet-style market control where Bolshevik subversives, permanently embedded in their host nation's government, violently reshape society in their own image, destroying the legacy and the birthright of all who came before? Ever draped in this illusory cloak of virtue and compassion, these traitors, without a hint of irony, ghoulishly celebrate the total cultural memicide and potential future genocide of multiple generations of ethnically European men, which they also think is funny. But the real kicker here is that this sicko 20th century ideology for psychopaths is not only pushed by every major corporation and public institution in society, but our own fucking governments have been subsidizing and financing this propaganda directly. Can you even fathom the level of hate it ultimately takes to set something up like this, to create a dynamic like this? I feel awful for younger gamers, because they never got the chance to experience this industry when it was actually legitimate, and not just another arm of a state system that hates them utterly. A status quo so clowned beyond the pale that more entertainment can be derived from mocking the products they produce than actually playing them. To this day, I still find it truly shocking how far gaming had to fall to reach this point, because I remember how great things actually used to be, This is the curse of the older millennial. I'm not trying to grift on the misery and the futility of this entire affair. My career doesn't depend on the industry continuing to be shit forever. I want things to get better because I love video games. Genuinely. The patrician's medium of entertainment, superior to all other forms. The great boomer filterer. A vessel for the only truly worthwhile art created yet this 21st century. Roger Ebert himself spinning like a dynamo in his grave at the mere utterance of such a statement. And, frivolity aside, of course, we probably have another few years of pain to go before total industry collapse, as the various Western corporate behemoths follow suit with Ubisoft and publicly humiliate themselves to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes, the chuds are winning, but we shouldn't become complacent. Because realistically, fixing an industry this broken would require a literal inquisition, it's the Jimquisition in reverse, as jackbooted chuds of the state implement the most extreme form of McCarthyism imaginable, the likes of which making the Crusades look like a routine bullpit inspection. We don't quite have the power to pull that one off just yet, so in the interim, I suggest that we treat these revolutionary subversives in the way that they've traditionally been treated. We starve them. Oh, what's that? Neil Druckmann's new Sony exclusive, Piss Christ, a Talmudic tale, not selling so well? Yeah, okay, commie, back of the bread line with you. Come on, move it. The peasants jeer and lob rotten fruit as Jason Schreier himself shuffles out of a 2-bit flop house on Skid Row, sipping spastically from a brown-bagged bottle of Soylent, as the bitter reality of video games journalism in a post-USAID world begins to sink in. USAID, this infinite money glitch that a lot of these corporations had, is now no longer an option for them. And so the power of the online anonymous chud shitposter has grown significantly, without the cushion of USAID to soften these inevitable upcoming losses, looming on the horizon like gargantuan icebergs, one pink, one white, one blue. The truth is, the woke never went broke because these constant self-inflicted losses were covered by USAID. And now that this paused gravy train is finally derailed, the total implosion of this industry is now inevitable, as Ubisoft nervously attempts to promote its new Black Samurai game, an authentic Japanese-themed Assassin's Creed. Marvel at the groundbreaking open-world gameplay that you've already experienced 15,000 times as you take up the blade of Lord Nobunaga's favorite melanated gentleman. Yasuke cuts a swath through hordes of terrified, innocent Japanese civilians. You know, what a beautiful tribute to the Japanese people. Be sure to pick up that season pass to unlock the Derek Chauvin multiplayer skin if you really want to get the most out of this title. And you know, at the time of making this video, the early player count is looking particularly poor, with shills and hilariously compromised journalists currently running interference, attempting desperately to hide the sheer scale of this disaster. We're talking about a $500 million plus budget here. Sacre bleu, Yves Guillemot exclaims as the vultures circle overhead. And at this point, even the culture of the Japanese industry is starting to feel the absence of this DEI US aid funding. No more woke kickbacks for Capcom and Square Enix, as the latter struggles with the reality of bankruptcy. Their once iconic IP of Final Fantasy underperforming by every metric, while the legendary Nintendo developer Masahiro Sakurai politely suggests that Japanese developers should focus on making games for the Japanese market instead of trying to appeal to Western players, Western trends, Western industrial culture. He recognizes and points out in this same interview that gamers overseas love Japanese video games and appreciate the uniqueness of the Japanese industry, something that our industry professionals here in the West seem to absolutely loathe. Their anti-Japanese bias and compulsion for sabotage expressed even through the process of localization. Entire JRPGs translated intentionally poorly and with communist propaganda inserted. But really, you know, this kind of woke clownery is just the tip of the iceberg. There are official documents being shared right now on the crucial nature of funding anti-Gamergate action online. You know, I mean, I remember speculating years ago that the US government was behind a lot of this anti-gamer garbage. Year after year, the gentleman gamer suffocated, crushed under the dung of video game journalism and the anti-white bigotry of the industry's new astroturfed culture. None of it was organic. None of it was necessary. Do not underestimate just how much influence this specific program has had on gaming and on the fate of the gamer himself. I often wonder how many deaths of despair this disgusting anti-masculine regime is in some way responsible for, robbing multiple generations of young men of a culture and a community that they helped build and that offered them genuine solace in a world that doesn't really give a fuck about them. The system itself observed the camaraderie of young, white, disenfranchised men sharing the joy of a Halo LAN party and some beers and pizza in 2008. They saw that and they said, this must be fucking annihilated at all costs.